Ruby and Joseph, Chapter 15. Ruby looked up and just a few meters away saw a sign hanging in front of a corrugated metal fence. It read, C&J Scrapyard. "Joseph, we found the scrapyard," Ruby exclaimed. "I can't believe it." "Well, we're safely here, Ruby," Joseph added and trailed off. "So we might as well check it out," finished Ruby. Joseph and Ruby slowly approached the corrugated fence, looking for a way in. Joseph spotted an opening and gently pushed against it. The fence opened without effort. They slowly walked their bikes through, and their mouths fell open in awe. Neither of them had ever been to a scrapyard. They saw smashed-up cars piled as high as a house, mountains of old tires, piles of twisted metal, and at the back of the yard was a mobile office. "Let's explore," said Joseph with renewed interest. He looked at his sister and saw that sparkle return to her eye. "Okay," Ruby replied, trying to hold back her smile. Ruby and Joseph had only turned the corner of the third tire pile when they bumped into a tall woman in overalls and work boots. She seemed to be waiting for them. She had her hands on her hips and one eyebrow raised up. "How can I help you two?" the woman asked in a surprisingly gentle tone, still with her hands on her hips. Ruby looked up sheepishly and opened her mouth, but no words came out. Ruby was not used to creating trouble. Joseph stepped in. "We're really sorry," he said softly, and then the story tumbled out. "We were trying to make a pulley to get wood to the second floor of our workshop out behind our new home. We didn't have the right parts. Mom didn't have time to take us to the hardware store since we just moved in, and she was unpacking boxes to get us settled. We thought we could get what we needed at your scrapyard, so we snuck off on our bikes to find your yard. It was really scary because we almost got run over by 2 cars and a truck on the way here. We found the opening in your fence, and here we are," said Joseph, completely out of breath by the end of his speech. "Let's find your parents. They're probably beside themselves with fear," predicted the woman in overalls. "I never thought of that," Ruby said, finding her voice. "Where do you live?" asked the woman. Joseph and Ruby did not answer, looking at each other. She continued, "You're right not to answer me. You don't know me. I'm Mrs. Annette," she said, extending her hand to Joseph and Ruby. They each shook her hand. "I'm Ruby, and this is my brother Joseph," Ruby replied, cautious not to give their last name to a stranger. "Why don't you two come over to the office and I'll get my phone. You can call your parents." All 3 of them walked over to the mobile office. Ruby and Joseph waited outside while Mrs. Annette went in to get her phone. When Mrs. Annette came back out, she also brought with her 3 wooden folding chairs and set them up in front of the office. Joseph and Ruby sat down and Mrs. Annette handed Joseph the phone. "I assume you're the older sibling?" asked Mrs. Annette. "Yes," answered Joseph, taking the phone hesitantly. "I will be inside if you need anything. I want to give you your privacy," said Mrs. Annette as she stepped back inside the office. Joseph looked up at Ruby. "Maybe you should call. It was your idea after all." Ruby sighed, feeling betrayed. "Fine," she consented. Ruby looked at the phone for what felt like ages before she dialed Mom's number. Just as the phone started ringing, Joseph took the phone from Ruby. "I'll do it," he said. "I agreed after all." Ruby let out a sigh of relief as Joseph put the phone to his head. They heard their mom answer. "Hello?"